Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever, I'm joined by Brian Dick and also our regular fan contributor Ryan Deeney. And a big warm welcome to Will Brazier, who's probably quite well known to Blues fans, especially in the Twitter sphere and the YouTube sphere. Been doing a little bit of work with the club this season as well. We're going to come on to that very shortly. Will, thank you very much for coming on. How are you and how are you bearing up from Wembley?
I think it's glad you asked me on a Wednesday to come on, because I think the emotions after sort of Sunday night, Monday, even a little bit of Tuesday. But overall, just a great week from that Tuesday in Peterborough to Saturday celebrating the champion, becoming champions, and then Sunday. I never saw Blues in 2011 at Wembley, so just to see them walk out. So I'm trying to handpick the positives, and I'm sure we'll come on to the negatives in a bit.
Ryan, thank you for coming on as well. You were photo bombing Tom Brady, weren't you, at Wembley?
I was indeed. I had courtesy of Gab Sutton. I'm sure people a lot know. We got some nice seats up in the Bobby Moore suite, and my missus was watching on the telly, and every time she saw me on telly, she kept sending me pictures. And yeah, there's a nice shot of me in the background while Tom Brady's on the telly. So yeah, we are best friends now.
Going back to your stuff with the club, Will, this season. I know recently you hosted the Meet the Manager evening with Chris Davies, Ben Petty, Jonathan Grounds, and Mike Taylor. And you also did a little video with two well-known strikers, Jay Stansfield and Alfie May. Didn't go that well for you, did it?
It's compelling. No. It was the best piece of content that Blues have done this season. Sorry,
Thanks,
go on.
Yeah. Well, no, I was trying to get a contract, and obviously I'm sat here now, so I haven't got my contract to play up front. But no, still trying with that one. But no, just been very lucky this season, and just trying to combine any sort of the presenting experience I have got with just first and foremost being a fan, and hopefully that comes across with the stuff that we've done and anything that comes in the future as well.
I don't think their advice particularly helped you on the day, to be honest. You seem to be all over the place watching the video. Finishing wasn't very good.
Well, I mean, Alfie May and Jay Stansfield are my Thierry Henry and Lionel Messi, but even those two couldn't have, made me any better. So it was just a nice day, good to get out there and at least score one free kick that I'll have on Instagram forever.
Will, regular listeners to this will know I do fret about the dynamic between Alfie and Jay. I need you to tell me that they're okay and they're best friends.
No, unfortunately, I can't do that, Brian. There was an off-screen fight in between the pair. No, honestly. I knew it. Just generally, I think the obviously Jay is so young, and I think people forget that, even with some of the criticism that's come across from this weekend, and even on that day with Alfie and Jay being together, I think it was a good dynamic, and Alfie got stuff out of Jay, and obviously Alfie's a bit more experienced from that side of things, but generally really get on, and I think that was prevalent after, was it the Shrewsbury game when Alfie scored the 2 goals, and hopefully that came across in our video, but the way those two celebrated after that game when Alfie finally got his goals, I think. Well, you'll know more than me. I just think the whole team's very united.
Yeah, they are a pretty decent group this year. They do all seem to be very friendly in that respect. And like you said about the Alfie May and Jay Stansfield embrace after that Shrewsbury game probably told more of the story than anyone else can. Just going back to Wembley, Brian and I have kind of rambled on for half an hour, 45 minutes on Monday. Just your reflections as a fan. Ryan, kick off first, then we'll go to Will. Your reflections on the day and what it meant to you, and obviously ended with disappointment, but the day as a whole.
I was just actually having this conversation in the office, and it's horrible to say because you almost get annoyed with the fact that you've allowed your emotions to sort of take over. And I think I should have allowed myself to listen to my gut early on and understand that it probably wasn't going to happen. And said just a couple of little things early on, like we lost those first couple of challenges in the middle of midfield, and then they had a throw-in or something like that, and I just saw their front four lined up against our front four 1v1, and it's like that feeling in the pit of your stomach just goes, oh no, we're not at this. But you allow yourself to get drawn in, don't you? Every time you go forward, Williamson sets Stansfield away and you think it's going to happen, and then just those little moments during the game. Sitting where I was, I had a fascinating, almost Chris Davies watch, which I found quite enjoyable. He lost his rag with Ethan Laird on more than one occasion. they actually had a bit of when Laird got taken off, he threw his arms up and had a bit of a moan, and then quite respectfully walked over to Davis, shook his hand, and like they had a bit of a moment, and then Laird walked back off to the bench and started having another rant and a moan to the bench about the fact that he's coming off. Also watching Davis with the fourth official and all the time waste and everything that was going on. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the refereeing stuff did take away from the quality of the game too, and it became a very frustrating watch second half because it felt like nothing was being done about it. And I don't blame Peterborough in the slightest. I mean, we've done it this season and we've done it brilliantly. Obviously, Taylor Gardner Hitman crawling back on the pitch against Rotherham. It just became a very frustrating afternoon, didn't it? And you still allow your emotions to sort of jump up, and logically you probably are sitting there thinking it just isn't going to happen. Peterborough deserved it, and it's a shame, but I think, again, sort of as Will alluded to earlier, it's Wednesday now, you're looking back and the week we've had is unbelievable. Maybe the emotions played a bit too much into the game and we couldn't quite find that sort of energy and that spark to really get us going. But we're going up. We're still on course to break. I think there's another 3 records we can still break. It is what it is. It was still a special day, and 50,000 Blue Noses heading down to Wembley. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah. Come on to those 3 records shortly. Will, firstly, can you tell us about the job that you didn't get to do at Wembley in the end?
Yeah, so I think I wasn't too far away from you, Ryan. So I was up in those sort of similar seats, and I do a lot of work for EA Sports, and as part of their partnership, they get to do various activations. So if Blues would have won, I was supposed to present some sort of Man of the Match award. So as we were sitting there going through the motions, I kept going a bit like you, Ryan. I was like, well, goal before 70, you'll be fine. Goal before 75. Then when that 11 minutes went up, I was like, a goal before 105, and we might have a chance. But it didn't keep coming. But so after that, I got to relax a little bit and probably just soak in the week that we've had, really. Especially, I joined the, it might be a contentious issue, but I joined the London Supporters Club this year. So I live up in London. So they've been putting on different meets and stuff. So everyone met together on Saturday evening for that. And that was nice. But there was like people coming there from New York, from Serbia, from all over the world. And honestly, that was just like really nice to meet everyone in Wembley and see that, really. So yeah, not too bad on the reflections of the game.
Yeah, that's the benefit of the sports club, isn't it? Moving on to the season as a whole, I'm going to go on to those records because they are still there for the taking. Probably the only motivation in the remaining 6 games is those records. So there's obviously the points record, which Blues need 3 wins from their final 6 games to get the points record because they've already got 95 points. That would be 104 points. 107 for the EFL record, which is held by Reading from 2005 and 6. I was looking at that yesterday, actually. They only lost 2 games, and one was on the opening day to Plymouth at home. They were on a ridiculous run to get 106 points in the Championship. So that's there for Blues. And there's also 5 more wins, which would give Blues the EFL record for wins in a single season, currently held by Doncaster Road from like the 1940s, I think. So there's 3 things there for the taking. If Blues get all 3 of those records, how good a season has this been, Brian?
It's been as good as you can possibly imagine now. And we've kicked around on here quite a lot. Is Chris Davis playing par at the moment, given the absolute huge riches to try and win League One with, winning League One there for his part. But, if you've done better than anyone else ever has in history, then you'd have to say that's a good job, wouldn't you? Even the most ardent skeptic would have to say you can't be other than doing better than anyone else. So, yeah, you look at the remaining fixtures and they all look really inviting, don't they? And you kind of think if Blues weren't yet over the line, you'd want to play those games and those opponents because, they're either not great teams or not got much to play for. The big test will be between the ears for me. And, the bodies might be willing, or the minds might be willing, but the flesh will be weak. I think, I just wonder how much they've got left in the tank because some key players look so jaded on Sunday. So yeah, listen, breaking those records would have been beyond everyone's wildest dreams, I think, at the start of the season. And you just have to say, could not have done any better whatsoever, no matter what players you've got at your disposal.
Yeah, picking up on that point Brian made, Ryan, do you think Blues? Do you think that's not enough of a carrot at this point for them to get those points records, potentially the wins record, or do you feel like it's going to be a kind of final 3 weeks where they are looking towards the summer and potentially taking their foot off the gas now? In effect, there is nothing massive to play for.
It's a strange one because I think our foot has kind of been off the gas for a while now. I feel like we had those 7 weeks, then where we had back-to-back games, 2 games in a week for 7 weeks in a row, and you could just tell towards the end of it we lost the game against Bolton. We kind of got through against Lincoln and Stevenage, and we were okay. And then the Northampton game happens. I think even since we've come back, I think we conceded 12 goals in the last 9 games, which just hasn't been like us this season. And it does feel a little bit like that mindset is already there again. The emotional toll, the mental toll, obviously the physical toll. So I think knowing Chris Davis, as we kind of have got to know Chris Davis, he's going to want to turn up on Friday, play his best 11, and he will demand that we win the game. How that translates when you've got to play 6 games in 15 days is quite tricky, and there's going to be a bit of rotation. He's going to have to make changes for each game. There's going to be whether he understands which players are up for it mentally as much as emotionally. I don't know whether we break all of those records. I think there might be a case of that we do just phone it in for a couple of games, because I don't think, as nice as the carrot is, I feel like it's one of those where if we're winning the game, we'll probably hold off. But if we turn up and we're not at it from the start, how much motivation will there be to really push and, demand that victory out of each other when the most important job is already done, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Will, I suppose that there are going to be players that are thinking about playing for their futures or playing for their parts next season, potentially. There are some players that haven't really impressed in the second half of the season. Is there anyone in particular that you want to see really take these 6 games by the scruff of the neck and show that they deserve a spot in the team for next season?
Well, I mean, Lukas Jutkiewicz, but I say that to every answer going forward. That's just my person. But he's already done enough over the last 10 years. No, I think just on the previous points, I think you see the post-match interviews with Chris Davis, and he keeps speaking about the history and the records. And I feel like if he's speaking about that in those interviews, it's quite telling to see how they're going to get implemented in the team meetings and going forward. So I think it is a big part, just because he's very aware of what we've all gone through over the last 10, 15 years. So if there is a chance to sort of really go on that running way and create a bit of history and, be one of the best ever blue sides, that is a massive thing. So I think that'll be behind him. In terms of the players, I think for me, it's very much, people already speaking about next year. I think it's whoever's playing up front next year, probably in behind that 3 in behind there. So I think those places are really up for grabs going forward, whether that's Kieran Dow, what happens with him. Williamson, obviously been a bit hot and cold for the rest of it. Keshi Anderson up there for player of the season for me. So, I think that in behind them, and then maybe some of the other areas. But I genuinely think like I don't know if I've been drinking the Kool-Aid too much and watching too many Chris Davis interviews, but I genuinely think like it'll be fully, especially after losing at Wembley, being on that grand stage. It's almost extra motivation to go out and say, right, we didn't win this, but we could become record holders.
Yeah, there's one thing that's been put to me a few times about Chris Davis this year is that he seems to find an angle for each individual game, like to kind of motivate players. So, obviously they need motivation more than ever now, don't they? So I suspect he probably will find something, probably more so than the points records or the kind of long-term stats. He'll probably find something individual for each of these final 6 games to make it worth their while. And obviously, they are, some of them are playing for their places, so it's got to be there, hasn't it? They can't just, throw away these final 6 and go on the beach when, there are things to play for. I
think sorry, just to come in there, Alex. I think Chris Davis does have to factor that into his selections from now on, because obviously Peck and Iwata, we can flog them to the end of the season. They can each end up playing 50 odd games, or you know, and the risk that maybe the tanks are empty, or the risk that maybe they've got their eye on some, you know, going home and you know, having some downtime. Or you could potentially say to Mark Leonard, right, you've got 6 games here now. You know, yes, you know, I've lost it with you a few times when you've made mistakes. This is what I want from you. I want to see this progression, you know, towards over the running of the season. So I think Chris Davies does have to be smart with his team selections. And I think if it's just a case of rolling out the 11 that we've become, or 10 of the 11 that we've become quite accustomed to, you know, I wonder if there might be the law of diminishing returns on that a little bit.
I think as well, if you go back to the Peterborough game on Tuesday, he made the 6 changes, didn't he? And I don't know how you guys felt, but it felt like we were a little bit fresher.
Yeah, there was a vigour to that team. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's a case of whether Davies can find that balance without completely tearing apart what has worked this season. And say giving Leonard a go, Samstead, even Luke Harris, you know, giving those guys the chance to actually, I suppose, prove themselves the way they haven't always had the chance to this year.
I was going to say, actually, Samstead, Leonard are the 2 that really jump out for me, that probably need more game time to kind of prove that they can be more than kind of bit part squad players next year, that they can actually play a role, and, you know, so that, you know, Blues don't have to go out and sign another right back, you know, through fear of Ethan Laird getting injured and missing 15, 20 games, that Samstead can be the man to come in. So those 2 really jump out. Anyone else jumping out at you guys?
Here's a bit of a curveball here for anyone can jump in on this. Do Blues talk to Fulham about taking Luke Harris permanently based on what we've seen so far this season? Ryan, I'll throw that at you first.
I think my concern on that one is you'll be paying a fee for Harris, and you're also potentially looking at Dow signing. You've got Williamson still on the books. You've got Dykes has played that role this season, and you probably maybe want another attacking midfielder. So is Harris the guy to fill that gap, or do you want the talk? The talk seems to be that we want to, you know, we're not just going up to make the numbers next season. We want to go up. We want to finish in the top 6, top 2. We want to, you know, hammer home and win as many games as we have this year. Like, that's the ideal scenario, isn't it? So is Luke Harris going to be that guy, or do we want to go out and sign someone who is ready-made to fill that gap and, you know, produce the same sort of stuff that the likes of Iwata and Clara and other signings that we made last summer have? And I'm not sure Harris is quite there.
I'd throw. I wouldn't be against signing Harris as like a player to develop, as someone to sign if it was like a relatively small fee. I'm talking probably around 300 grand, and then you send him out on loan to a League One club, top end League One club, and let him have that season that he probably hoped he'd have this season, where he plays every week in a team that's competing for top 6, top 2 in League One. He's obviously already kind of had the half a season at Exeter, done quite well there. Had the season at Blues where he's probably learned more about how to be around the right kind of characters and dressing room, in a winning dressing room. I think he probably needs to go and have that season again, but be a main player, which he hasn't been this season. I wouldn't be against if it's in that kind of scenario that he's loaned out to a team in League One that's going to be challenging next season.
I think depending on the fee, I don't know how much you'd have to get for him. I think Chris Davies really likes him. I think that's very evident, isn't it, from some of the times that he's come on. So obviously there might be potential there that we've not seen on the training pitch. I think for all the talk from after Sunday from Tom Wagner and everything around next season, I think they're going to go big. And I think, like I said earlier, that front 3 and behind the striker are really up for grabs. And I think that'll be a sort of statement made signing in and around that area. And for me, Luke Harris doesn't really fit that mould. Nothing to sort of against it. It probably just shows the growth and the trajectory that we're on going forward.
That said, he has, I think his last 5 or 6 games and his last 6 weeks have been much better. So I do see encouraging signs of progress there. Sorry, Alex, go on.
No, that's the point I was probably going to make as well. Anyone else in there? You got Leonard, you got Harris, you got Samstead. I think we need to see a little bit more from Williamson. But how many more chances does he get? Because he's played 40 odd games, and they're probably, as we've mentioned, Harris probably deserving a little bit now as well. Has Sunday changed anyone's opinion of Kieran Dow? I know he's been getting a little bit of stick for his performance. Obviously, before that, he was pretty much perfect in 13 games. Can we just rule it out as one bad game and we still sign him in the summer?
I really like Kieran Dow, but there have been certain circumstances where I just think like, and I know probably the physicality is not his game. I'd be interested to see how much the deal is to sign him. I think that's a big indicator going forward. I think some of his movement, some of his vision, some of the composure in that final third, and even some of the touches on Sunday were good in a bad performance. So the interesting one for me would be around the fee. And another name I was going to say is because I think he's back after Wembley, or I don't know if it's been changed again. You two will probably know, is Lyndon Dykes. Because I feel like the culmination of him having a bad season, well, not a bad season, but from the outset, people piling in on him because of his goal figures, sort of culminated with that Bradford game and getting that moment. And he has been a sort of really good player in that area. But then obviously the injury sort of affected him again. And yeah, I don't know if
that was about Shaw around there. Yeah, it was a couple of months ago, wasn't it? And Chris Davis suggested initially that, he hoped that Dykes will be back for the games after Wembley. Dykes was at Wembley in a protective boot on Sunday. And to be fair, I've not seen him without that protective boot at the training ground in the last 6-7 weeks. So I can't imagine that he's probably going to be fit for these final few games.
Was Bielik injured for the Sunday?
Yeah. Apparently, he had an injury after the. That's what Chris Davis said, that he had an injury after the Peterborough game midweek.
So even that's an interesting one, isn't it? Just from the start of the season to where we are now, with like the club captain to obviously I thought he was brilliant on Tuesday against Peterborough and really added something. But I think that's going to be an interesting one. There was rumours in January, wasn't there? So that could be a big one going forward as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex. Come.
No, I was going to probably what you were just going to say, Brian. I think it's hard to see Christian Bielik here next season if he's going to be a bit part player. I don't think he's that sort, is he? He's going to want to go somewhere and be a starter. He made the point in the interview with you, Brian, didn't he, that he's never had this in his career before. When he's been fit, he's always played. So I can't imagine he's going to be happy with a bit part role. Yeah,
again, just keeping an eye on the little interactions. As Davis was sort of engaging with all of his players on the final whistle on Sunday, he and Bielik did shake hands. Gave each other a pat. So there didn't seem to be any public issue there or anything like that. So being interesting. I'd like to see Bielik play some of these games, to be honest with you. And if Chris Davis he's not quite doing what Chris Davis wants him to, then maybe say you've got 4 or 5 games to really test yourself and try and put some of the principles that I want to see out there. So Bielik could be another one for me.
Just to go back onto the point about Lyndon Dykes, there was a conversation the other day around Stansfield and obviously the whole, open play goals and stuff like that. When you actually look at the goals that he's scored this season from open play, so many of them have come as a result of him playing either just producing a moment of utter brilliance or playing up alongside Dykes, who does so much work in carrying defenders away, doing sort of the physical stuff, dropping off, and taking players with him so that Stansfield can play more 1v1 up against somebody rather than, as he has a lot of this season, standing in the box with 2-3 centre-halves around him and 2 defensive midfielders in front of him. And I wonder how much... I'm curious to sort of, when it comes to the summer, I mean, whether Dykes gets so much game time between now and the end of the season, if he's fit, well, so. But I am curious when it comes to the summer as to whether Dykes potentially has a big role next year or whether we sign somebody of that kind of ilk that can get more out of Stansfield or whatever other striker we sign, because it feels like May and Stansfield have actually benefited more from having that. I'm loath to say a big guy, but someone who does do so much of that work in, the sort of the selfless stuff, isn't it? And sort of allows others to be better by, doing the stuff that maybe doesn't get seen so often.
This is an opportunity for Will to hand Lukas Jutkiewicz a 6-year contract.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd have handed him a 21 years one about 5 years ago. So I think that's good. Do you know anything about that? Is that good? Is it? Are we done with the Duke at the end of this year, or coaching? Give me some sort of hope.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, the kind of messages I've had is that the club want to look after him. So yeah, we've talked about it. He hasn't played much this year, as he said. It's difficult to see him playing much next year. Whether he kind of goes into the bit part player as a player coach role, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how he feels about coaching. I know he's done the sport directorship route, hasn't he? He's done that a degree in that, so maybe he wants to go down the recruitment line. I I think, like Brian said it in a previous podcast, you kind of let him make his own mind up, don't you? He's 1 year away from a testimonial. That would be a great thing. Can you get testimonials for 9 years rather than 10? Is that a thing? You give a player one.
FEA,
just play in a third of the ground or something like that. I've done that before.
I think with him, it's like it's just like you said. I think the main thing about this season, even speaking to some of the coaching staff, has been they've been really praising that second 11 that's not been playing and how much they pushed the first 11. And I think he's driven that this season, even from the seasons before. He's always a main part of that. So that's why I'm so pro keeping him around, just because he always does drive those standards.
Yeah, he's a super selfless player, isn't he? In that respect. Moving on to the manager and player of the year nominations. They've come out this morning. The EFL Awards night is on April 27th, a week before the season ends. Blues have got to play about 15 games in that final week, so I'm not sure why that's happened. Chris Davies is up for League One Manager of the Season, alongside Phil Parkinson of Wrexham, Charlton's Nathan Jones, and Leyton Orient's Richie Wellens. And Tomoki Iwata is up for the League One Player of the Season alongside Richard Kone of Wickham and Davis Kayla-Dunn of Barnsley. On the manager one first, obviously a fair nomination. Is there anyone there you think is a threat to Chris Davies winning it? And is there anyone there you think should, or not on there, who should have been on there from another club?
I think they're all a threat because nobody at EFL Towers ever seems to want to give Davis any awards, does he? So, sorry, it's a little bit salty. Go on, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, I suppose Phil Parkinson's the one who really, isn't it? Because if Wrexham go up, then, there's another promotion there, isn't there? But I'm quite happy to bang the drum for Davis. I think people look at the spend but don't see the amount of change that happened over the summer and the culture that he's had to set, and the fact that we have won and won and won and won. And just to throw it out there, it was worked out the other day by a Sheffield Wednesday fan, I believe it was, based on the wages and the inflation and stuff. Because my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that our wage bill actually went down in the summer, or it's about level.
It did go down from last year. In the accounts from last year, it went down on the previous year, I think. So that's probably because those big earners come off the books, didn't they, in the summer?
Kenny Jackett in 2013-14 won the LMA Manager of the Year award for breaking the League One record, and their wage bill on inflation was bigger than ours. So if Kenny Jackett is getting that reward and we're potentially going to break that record, then there's no reason that Davies shouldn't be receiving similar awards to, particularly given the scale of change this summer and the fact that, again, we're breaking records.
I hope the record has been broken before April 27th, because then obviously that pretty much would nail it for him, wouldn't it? I actually think Richie Wellens is probably the best kind of opposition candidate for him. And that seems strange because, Leyton Orient, I think in November time, were probably knocking around the relegation place, and all of a sudden they had a ridiculous run over December and January where I think he won back-to-back Manager of the Month awards, and they've got themselves in playoff contention. The season's not going to be finished when this award is handed out, so Leyton Orient might still be seventh, and that'll probably affect Richie Wellens' chance of winning it. But he's probably the best contender. I think Charlton have probably done what everyone expected of them. Wrexham have probably just about done what everyone expected of them, maybe a little bit more. And obviously Blues have done what's expected of them by winning the league, but no one expected them to do it in such style, did they? So that's where I think Chris Davies' USP in terms of winning this award comes from.
Just throw a couple of extra names in there. Sorry, Will, and then I'll let you go. Would be, Dave Challoner at Stockport. They stayed up there. They lost Louis Barry halfway through the season, and they remain, a live playoff contender. And whoever's been in charge at Reading for me has done miracles. Obviously it was Ruben Sellés until he was headhunted by Hull in December, and it's been Noel Hunt since. And to have that team up there against the backdrop of the club, is a supreme piece of management for me. Sorry, go on, Will.
No, I was going to say, and I think if the season was a bit longer the other way, I think the job Stephen Schumacher has done at Bolton. I went to that game on late notice on a Tuesday night, expecting a win, and I thought they absolutely battered us that day. They've been brilliant, playing some really good football. But I think just to go back to what Ryan was saying, what Chris Davis has done shouldn't be punished by what we've spent. Like, it is generational. It's like absolute history makers, and that shouldn't get hold against him, because if you add in other factors in, like his first managerial job, to go and do that, I think that should be added to the achievement as well.
And he must have had the most manager of the month nominations. So surely if you tally them all up, he gets the big one at the end.
I think we've also broke the record as well, haven't we, for earliest title win in League One history.
Yeah, Wolves didn't get it this early.
And I had a look back. Reading achieved theirs, I think, on match day 41. So I don't know if it's the earliest EFL title win either, which has surely got to count for something.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to look into. Moving on to the players, obviously, as mentioned earlier, Awarta's up. Awata, this is the weird phenomenon where you might have Awata might win Player of the Season for the whole of League One, and he's probably not going to win the Blues Player of the Season. So where do we stand on this? So should someone else have been nominated? Obviously, they're only going to pick one Blues player; they can't put 3 in. But should someone else have got that nomination?
We'll nail your colours to the mast here. Team Iwata or Team Peck?
Team Lukas Jutkiewicz, but unfortunately, no, I am. I'm definitely Iwata, just because I was about 4 points in that Newcastle game, and absolutely, like, that first half an hour is the greatest half of football I've ever witnessed. It was like from the light show to that Awata going in, it was absolutely biblical for 45 minutes. So just for that moment and for the goals alone, Awata over Peck. But yeah, I think I tweeted out the other week, it's just so nice to have a season where we've actually got multiple choices to pick from for Player of the Season. And Jay Stansfield walking out with 10 trophies last year, we've just got so many options. So yeah, it's sort of a classic thing, isn't it, that the EFL would pick up on that. I'm supposed to be, after my look from last time, I'm supposed to be, I don't present it, I give the Young Player of the Year award out. I just stand there and pass it on. So I did it last year. So I thought Jay was going to get a nomination for this one, but yeah, I'm having to contend with some other players. But I've said that now, I've cursed it. I'll just be sat at my table.
For you.
Exactly.
Christoph Clara. I feel like Christoph Clara deserved a nomination, but defenders very rarely get in. You've got a striker and 2 midfielders. One for Blues, who's scored, I think, 6 goals in the league. And obviously, Davis Caylor has scored 15. So has Christoph Clara been hard done by?
I think I'm right in saying these awards are sort of sorted out around February time, aren't they? Where I think Iwata had, like I say, he'd scored all his goals by that point, and he'd had obviously the couple of the big moments, hadn't he? So I'm assuming that's where it's come from. Whereas same as you, I think Christoph Clara will be Blues' Player of the Year, and I think he should be the League One Player of the Year. I think that run we went on where we conceded, was it 4 goals in about 18 games, and him standing, heading, kicking, clearing everything away against the likes of Wickham and Wrexham and Huddersfield and whoever else. I've said before, I think he'll end up captaining us in the Premier League, and I think he's kind of proven this season that he's the guy now, isn't he? He's our leader. He's the one who steps up when we need someone usually, and he's Player of the Season for me.
Is he your Player of the Season as well, Will? Clara or someone else?
Definitely Clara, and then Keshi Anderson as well, just because, obviously being Blues fans, just knowing the trajectory of getting him in on a free and what he went through to sort of do that, and then just to see just the way he's impacted games and just that relationship he's forged on his side of the pitch as well. I just think he's been absolutely phenomenal, and some of the goals he scored as well, and some of the moments. So I wonder, because they also do the team of the season there, don't they? So I wonder how many, because even some of those nominations have been a bit lacking. So I wonder how many Blues players have actually getting that. Because I'd have all 11, but we're a little bit biased on this podcast, aren't we?
It's like you've read the running order. That's next. How many Blues players should make team of the season? Obviously, they're probably not going to get to more than 5. I think Wolves had 5 when they were in League One, so they're probably, they're not going to just give a team of Blues players, are they? So, who are the ones the way they can't be ignored?
Allsop, Clara, Cochrane. I suppose it's going to be Iwata or Peck, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be Iwata, isn't it?
And then I get the impression they're probably going to stick Stansfield in there too, although we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like Stansfield's going to miss out just because of all this noise around.
I do.
All the open goal stuff, and then not being a Young Player of the Year nomination as well. I think Allsop will miss out as well, just because I don't know if you ever had it when you were playing Sunday League as a kid, but the man of the match would normally go to the goalie who's let like 24 goals in to give him the sympathy vote. Whereas like Allsop's had nothing, like obviously less to do than other keepers, so it will go to one of the middle of the road keepers. I think who's probably obviously saved more. So I reckon Iwata, Keshi, Clara. I think that'll be the only three, but definitely should be more.
Okonkwo at Wrexham, to be fair, has got the same number of clean sheets as Allsop in slightly fewer games. So I guess he's probably in contention as well. Ethan Laird has had an exceptional season, especially second half of the season. But I know Barnett at Wrexham has also had a very good season, so maybe they can throw him in there. It's difficult. I think probably right. I think you're probably going to get Clara, Cochrane, Iwata, Anderson, and maybe Stansfield. I don't think anyone else is going to get in.
What a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I mean, this might be a conversation for another podcast or something, but Iwata's been voted for player of the season and he's probably going to be in team of the season. And he might not even be our starting central midfielder next year.
I think he will be. I think he will be. Yeah, he's got to be. Chris Davies loves him too much for him not to be. I think he will be. I feel sorry for Peck that he's just been kind of judged for not scoring goals. Because for me, I'm Team Peck and the Team Peck and Iwata battle. I think he's just exceptional. He's done things in League One that I've never seen a League One player do before. And to not get any recognition, which he's probably not going to get at the end of the season, just feels a bit harsh.
Yeah, and even just his relations, like just keeping him, wasn't it? I think that the recent interviews he did for local press over there, just saying about how instrumental Chris Davies was, and I think for me, just taking those little bits out for now, Chris Davies has had a year at the helm, like just how much the wider footballing world will see that going forward as well, and players talk, agents talk, managers talk. Like this is the project going forward, isn't it? So I think that all ties back into that.
Can I just move us on to the championship list? In my job, I sort of read quite a lot of content from our Coventry and Derby and Stoke City writers. So I've sort of kept one toe in the championship, and the championship nominations for Manager of the Month: Daniel Farke, Scott Parker, Chris Wilder, and Reggie Lebris. Basically, they've imaginatively gone for the top four managers, which just seems. Some of them have got. They all got parachute payments. No, Lebris wouldn't have a parachute payment, but the others would all have parachute payments, so they're where they should be. And without going too far down the old Wayne Rooney route, it seems that we can't talk about John Eustace without talking about Wayne Rooney. John Eustace, to me, I think he's done a brilliant job as a championship manager this season. He had Blackburn in 5th before, choosing Derby, who were 21st, and then at Derby he's got 4 wins out of 7 games when they'd not won in 9 and lost 7 of 9 under Paul Warne. So, he's to me, he's got a bit of a cultish following around him. Those who really like him, hasn't he? But I just because he's not maybe a fantastically interesting interviewee, I do think he's a massively competent manager, and you're not going to get nominated for Manager of the Year when your team's 21st or whatever. But just just to say that I think the selection of nominations in the Championship really shooting fish in a barrel, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Liam Manning as well. Liam Manning. Yeah. Frank
Lampard in half a season. You're not going to get it in half a season, are you? I know, but yeah, you're right. Liam Manning's another one that's relevant now as well.
Have you seen who's been linked with the Blackburn job?
I have indeed. Yeah. Wayne Rooney's been linked with the Blackburn job.
It's just to ruin everything that John Eustace has created.
Are you trying to goad me, Ryan? Here. Let's move.
I'm not saying nothing.
It's actually like a cycle that can't be broken, is it? Like, goes somewhere, does a bad job, goes on TV, people start to forget about it, changes opinion, gets a new job, goes there. It's an endless cycle that will never be ended, Wayne Rooney going to a football club. But seeing as we're playing Blackburn Rovers next season, I actually think it will be a wonderful appointment for the club going forward and a very progressive job.
There we go. Let's leave that on that,
yeah. Just to finish for the final 5 minutes or so, we're going to talk about Crawley Town on Good Friday. first against 22nd in the League One table. They did initially pick up after bringing Scott Lindsay back as manager. They won their first 2 games on him, including that 4-0 thrashing of Rotherham. They got Steve Evans the sack, but they've lost the last 3. And to be fair, there's half a chance they could effectively be relegated on Friday if Blues beat them and Burton Albion won, because it'd be a 9-point difference between them and safety, and they've got a far worse goal difference than Burton Albion. Anyone expecting anything other than a Blues win, or is it a case of we're talking about earlier where the Blues actually can turn up and have something to play for?
It was quite a tough game down there, wasn't it, Alex? Just before Christmas.
Yeah, it was. They were actually. I thought they were a really good side, played good football. Obviously implemented by Scott Lindsay in his first time around before he left for MK Dons mid-season. But they just clearly had absolutely no firepower and didn't ever look like scoring. They worked the way through the thirds really well, defended well enough, but just had nothing going forward. And I noticed it's been a little bit different since he's gone back in. They've clearly just binned any defensive principles they had and have just gone gung-ho going forward and have scored some goals, but they've conceded a lot more. So I think they'll come to St Andrews and probably play their own way, which is the only way Scott Lindsay knows how to play, and that's play football and try and take the game to Blues. And we've seen the vast majority of teams who've done that this season lose. So, yeah.
Well, I think any time we've had a sort of defeat or sort of negative performance, the reaction from Chris Davis, was it Shrewsbury at the start when we lost, and then the game at Exeter when he put Bielik into right back? Like, there's always been a change. There's been something that's been moved about, and I just think that's such a real power of his and something that he always identifies. So I generally think like Sunday for him will be really embarrassing just because of that stage, and I think Friday will be a real reaction to that.
Do we get Alfie May and Jay Stansfield back in the same 11, do you think?
I know people are having the issues with him at the moment. I feel like Willemsen stays in that team because of a lot of the set-piece stuff as well as just the open play stuff. And if you remove Willemsen out, then you've got essentially one bloke who is over 6 foot in the team, it feels like.
He's staying in the team by default, though, isn't he, at the moment, Willemsen?
Yeah, and I don't really know how... Just from a set piece point of view, if you remove Willemsen, I don't really know, unless you're moving Bielik back into right back or at centre half, or throw Grant Hanley into the side. It's a difficult one to tighten up those set pieces, unless you do go and trust, the likes of Davis and maybe Dowell to do that job defensively. And obviously, set pieces has been a big issue, wasn't it, for a while? And we slowly got better at them until we let the door creak open again recently. So I wonder if Willemsen starts again, but then if Willemsen's starting, I don't really see where May comes into the team unless he replaces. It feels like Davis is going to take it as seriously as possible, pick his strongest 11, and we'll just kind of work out the other 5 games that follow from there as to how things go. So I'd assume maybe Leonard replaces Peck if Peck's injured, and that'll be that.
I'd like to see it, like I just mentioned it, I'd like to see a little bit of Leonard anyway, just because he's not had much game time second half of the season, or since Peck came back at least. Does anyone else not like Stansfield out wide? I feel like it really has been a frustration of mine in the last few games that I know Chris Davis had to do it to kind of get Alfie May into the team, and I prefer to watch Alfie May as a number 9 than I do when he played number 10. But I do think you lose a lot when you put Jay Stansfield wide left, as we've seen since January when he's been playing as a striker. His goal return has been way better, and his performances have largely been much improved. So I think you lose a fair bit by putting him there. I think you probably lose a bit in Anderson by putting him in front of Laird on the right hand side as well.
He's not wide, is he?
He was at Wembley, I thought.
He was at Wembley, yeah. You don't want him wide. You want him as a left-sided number 10, don't you? With Cochrane, the one giving the width there. But yeah, you were right at Wembley. He was wide. No, I mean we said it last year when you stuck him out there. He needs to be closer to the goal, in more central positions. I don't know that he settled the debate this season as an out and out number 9 without the right partner, as Will was saying. I like him as a 10. I like him as just about like him as a left-sided 10 if you're going to do that, or obviously as a striker with a bit of support, because how often this season have we seen him as a fairly slight young man with up against 3 centre backs, and the ball's got to be an absolute worldie to find him.
Yeah,
he's not at the level, but I think I said last season he ironically reminds me a little bit of a Rooney, where he's not really a 9, he's not really a 10, he's not really a inside forward. He's just a very instinctive, explosive striker. And I think the difficulty at times this season has been the game has been so controlled and so sophisticated in the way we try and go about creating chances. And he's stood in the box on his own. He's marked by 2 centre halves, and then he's got the 2 defensive midfielders in front of him. If he starts floating around, there's nobody up top. If he tries to get involved elsewhere, then you kind of lose anything in that sort of area. And I think the difficulty has been finding a way to allow him to be at his instinctive best, which is where we've seen those moments against Barnsley, against Charlton, or where, we're talking about Crawley. Dykes drags the centre half away, Anderson goes in behind, and then Stansfield's 1v1 bangs straight in front of the centre half and heads home the winner. And I think the difficulty we've found is whether he's playing as the 9, whether he's playing as the 10 or as the sort of inside left, we haven't always found a way to allow him to just be instinctive and break in behind and do something out of nothing. And I don't really know at the moment with the options we've got, particularly with Williamson not really offering that sort of big, strong 10 who's really engaging with centre halves. He's more sort of floating in those little pockets. I don't think we've really had given Stansfield the space to do what he does best. I don't really know how we change things to allow him to do that in the meantime.
In a team of like system players, he's the kind of the one who's off the cuff a lot of the time, isn't he? And probably needs to be off the cuff to be at his best. I would really like to them sign a kind of more physical, mobile, focal point of a striker in the summer, and somebody for Stansfield to really play off and thrive around, because I think he can do it if there is that person there, and it would really help his game.
I think on him though as well, there's such a spotlight on him because of it probably doesn't help doing 5 minutes on the podcast on him, that increases the spotlight. But in terms of like what he's done, like the goals we've scored have come from all over the pitch as well, which I don't think gets recognised. But he is a part of that from the defensive work, from the pressing. Obviously, the goal against Barnsley is the sort of pinnacle of that. But I generally think he really offers a lot more than maybe some of the negatives that have been focused on, especially in the last couple of weeks. And also, like I touched on at the start, he is learning. Like, what is he, 20? We've got ourselves a player on our hands for the next couple of seasons, and he's already improved for the 2 seasons that we've had. And I think he had 6 managers last season. Let's all be just grateful we're going into a season with the same manager for the first time. And I just think that progression under him maybe takes away from some of the attributes, but we're still getting an absolutely world-class striker.
Yeah, I think that the criticism after him post-Wembley was way over the top. Like, he was the only one that played poorly, but the whole team played poorly. And I guess any criticism aimed at him was because he fell short of the expectations, and those expectations are attached to the price tag. So, yeah. Yeah,
he's the poster boy for it all, and he's going to be the whipping boy as well when things go wrong, isn't he, as far as like people outside the Blues bubble go. So, which again is very unfair. But, when you look at it on the whole, he has had quite a good season. There was that spell between January and February before he got the injury against Bradford, where I thought he was the best Blues player in that period, and they got some very important wins in that period. So he's more than played his part in the promotion and win the league.
I think the other thing as well is he has stepped up in so many big moments this year, hasn't he? Stevenage in the quarter-final, Bradford, the goal against Charlton, the double against Wrexham, the double against Barnsley. The fact that we got to Wembley, and obviously all the revenue and stuff that Wagner talks about, means that Stansfield has probably, in part with those goals in the semi and the quarter, essentially paid off a big chunk of the fee that we paid for him. So I think he's had a good season, and there's more to come.
All that remains to say is, Will, thank you. Nice to meet you virtually, and thanks for your presence today. Ryan, thank you as ever for your insight, and Alex, thank you for your time as well. All that remains is a big keep right on from all 4 of us.